Welcome in to Postgame Live on channel BSR. I am Jake English, joined tonight by John Wilkes of Orioles Uncensored. John, thanks so much for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, we get to break down a great Orioles game.
God, it keeps getting. Just when you think it can't get worse, it gets worse.
And we've seen worse. Like, we as Orioles fans, we know worse. We know what worse looks like.
Yeah, but it's amazing what 2 years of success have done to erase like 15 years of terrible baseball. So it's almost like we've forgotten how bad we were, and we're
Now,
kind of still living in that 2012 dream.
right, do you think it's a reasonable or unreasonable expectation with as cranky as O's fans get over every loss?
It's probably. I think we all know it's unreasonable. I mean, again, but we none of us want to go back there. So I think with every loss, we kind of fear that it's around the corner,
Right.
and especially when you have, and again, in years past, you never had hope. When you didn't have hope, you didn't care if you got anything, you got a win here or there, it's great. But now we have hope, and now we have kind of aspirations. So when things go bad, we don't know how to handle them.
Absolutely. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we walk through the box score really quick before we get to some of our game notes? The box score on the Orioles side kind of quiet, so I'm going to switch over to the Houston Astros. The story of the night was really the starting pitcher Peacock, who went 6 innings, scattered 6 hits, gave up an earned run, and that was about it. 65 of his 93 pitches were strikes. He looked pretty good tonight.
Yeah, I mean, again, the Orioles have a tendency to make mediocre pitchers look like the next coming of Cy Young, and they did again today with Peacock, who from all accounts is kind of pitching for a spot in the rotation.
Right, on the Houston Astros, no less.
Yeah, exactly. So we got their quote unquote ace, in Bud Norris that we got from them a couple years ago. So I mean, you can say what that says about the state of Houston Astros pitching, but I mean, what can you say about Peacock tonight? He was on point. He made Chris Davis look foolish a couple times. He made J.J. Hardy look foolish a couple times. So
Yeah, well, I mean, again, going back to the box score, the top of the lineup did okay. You got a hit each from Markakis, Steve Pearce in the number 2 hole, and Adam Jones. Nelson Cruz had in the 5 hole had 2 hits and a hit apiece from Ryan Flaherty and Nick Hundley at the end. Quiet night for Machado, who was 0 for 4. Quiet night for Davis, who was 0 for 4, as well as J.J. Hardy with an 0 for 4. So the Orioles just couldn't get anything together, and it seemed like in every inning, the Astros had guys on base and had guys stealing and had guys advancing on ground balls, and the Orioles just never really got, out of first gear.
I mean, really, the fact that this game is 3-1 is actually. I mean, this game could have been a lot worse than 3-1. I mean,
Sure.
the Astros had plenty of chances early with men on base, especially a couple chances with men on second and third, and just weren't able to drive any runs home. So, I mean, Ubaldo didn't pitch great, but he kept us in it. So, and we had our chances there at the end. But nobody, I mean, we haven't had a big hit in a while, so that's what happens.
All right. Well, why don't we actually talk about the game itself? Yes, we must. Traditionally, here what we do is we go through a set of highlights and lowlights, and then break into offense, defense, and pitching. So, John, can you hit us up with a highlight for tonight?
I mean, they're few and far in between. I mean, I guess the highlight probably was the one run we had was Cruz's single. I mean, again, a 2-out single, another clutch hit. It seems that it's Cruz and kind of everyone else. And the fact that he drove in Pierce kind of shows the state of the Orioles. It seems like those are the only two guys you can count on anymore, which, again, if you told me, at the beginning of the season that the only two guys you could count on were Steve Pierce and Nelson Cruz, So, but I think that for me, that was probably the lone highlight.
Sure. Well, my highlight for the game was actually the first inning where Ubaldo Jimenez
Okay.
pitched a clean first inning and only threw 12 pitches, which is something not only have we not seen from Ubaldo Jimenez, but we really haven't seen from the staff in general over the last several starts. No runs given up in the first. That in itself seems like a success. But the fact that he was pitch efficient was really a good thing, and it kind of set the right tone for his outing, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he had a great first. I mean, again, but the great first then gets taken away by what he does in the second. It washes it out, and we're right back to where we've been all year with, you know, 38, 40 pitches for these guys through 2 innings.
Hey,
And
hey, it's a bad loss. I had to pick a highlight. All right.
I hear you. I hear you. Absolutely.
All right. For a low light, a lot better things to pick from. What do you have for the game?
Chris Davis, overall, over 3 Ks. I mean, he's right. I think he's hovering around, was it like 237. He doesn't look like he still looks a little lost at the plate. The swing has gotten long again, which last year when he was on fire, it was kind of a little more short and compact, and he was driving the ball, and it's just not there. He hasn't even hit a lot. I mean, besides he did have the 3 home run game, but outside of that game, he hasn't had a lot of games where you go, oh, he's back, or he just missed that one.
Right.
It's a lot of
He
bad. It's a
he,
lot of
ju-
bad swings.
he just missed it by a foot. Is really
Yeah,
what he's missing by now.
yeah, and it's so I mean that's one of the lights. Manny's play where he, on the when Altuve hit it off Ubaldo's glove, and Manny kind of fields it. You got to eat that one.
Right.
He's lucky with that ball bounced the way it did, because if that ball bounces into the outfield with Altuve's speed, he's sitting on third.
Sure.
So
All right. Well, my low light for the game has to be Springer's two-run home run in the seventh, and really, with the way the offense was going, you kind of just had that feeling that it was the deciding run. And we've been treated to a little bit of late inning magic from the Orioles lately, but it just had that feeling of, okay, time to pack it in and get them tomorrow.
yeah, I mean, again, that one hurt, especially because of who Preston Gilman would pitch so well, and he seemed like one of the guys we could trust. And then we kind of learned the hard way we can trust none of these guys.
Right. Trust no one.
Trust no one. I mean, it's good. I mean, again, it was Bud Norris yesterday, and it's just guy after guy. I mean, there's no consistency from any of these guys, and I think consistency is by far this team's biggest issue. I don't. That's the problem, because it's not I don't know, even for the pitching it's a skill set, but for our offense it's not a skill issue. It's just these guys haven't been consistent from night to night. I mean, if another quick little light. Nick Markakis saw 9 pitches in 4 bats,
Yeah.
and I mean, and I said he got the hit, but when you're a leadoff hitter and you're looking at 9, you're looking at 2 pitches in a bat. I mean, I know it's not these guys' mo to take pitches, but something needs to change.
Well, if not seeing pitches is not working for you, why don't you at least give it a shot, right?
Try something new. I mean, at this point, it can't hurt, and I think that's more than anything.
Well, that's a good segue. Let's take it into the offense. We saw kind of a new look lineup from Buck Showalter tonight, which I thought was interesting because I thought it had a lot of the guys really in the right place. Manny Machado was down in the order. J.J. Hardy was pushed down in the order. So it had a lot of the better components to it. What did you think of the lineup construction tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the lineup, as it was, much better. I mean, a couple weeks ago on our podcast, Ortal Sensor, I was talking about getting Manny lower in the lineup because he's just not back yet. I think the one other thing I'd like to see is probably drop Chris Davis, maybe even behind Nelson Cruz. I mean, at this point, like we said, he's hitting 237. I mean, what's the point of having him? Put him fifth. Maybe get some people on base for him. Maybe that'll help a little bit. Maybe we'll start seeing some pitches. But right now, he's kind of almost in Cruz's way. But I think the lineup looked a little bit. I think what you're going to start seeing a little more of the year, especially with Pierce batting second. You need a hot hitter in your second spot, and I don't know if we've had a hotter hitter than Steve Pierce on this team.
Yeah, I mean, riding the hot hand and putting him in the two-hole is a good strategy, period. And, we just talked about it on Bird's Eye View last week. Steve Pierce is not an everyday player, and he's not a star. He's a great bench player, and he's good that way, especially because he checks his ego at the door. But while he's playing well, it's nice to see him put in a position where he can help the team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's why he's hot, because, listen, I mean, no one's expecting Steve Pierce to bat, 330 the entire year. I mean, it's
Right.
Steve Pierce is Steve Pierce. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. He's going to come down to earth. So why he's kind of playing out of his mind? Let's you ride that wave as long as possible, especially when you don't have a lot of other options. It's not like because Steve Pierce is playing, player A who's also doing well isn't playing. I mean, maybe it costs Delman Young some at bats, but whatever. But it's a guy like David Lowe. He's hitting 160. I mean, it's not like he's stealing at bats from anyone who's been overly productive.
Yeah, David Lowe has 15 more hits than you and I do. So, I mean, come on now.
I mean, and then at the bottom, Flaherty got some time tonight, which I think.
That's right, your man Ryan Flaherty.
19 more to go, baby. 19. Again, the second base issue, it seems, between Scope, when you think he has it figured out, he kind of goes on these little bad runs.
Then he plays like a rookie.
Yeah, exactly. And then Flaherty, who plays like a rookie, who's going to play like a rookie every year for the rest of his life. I mean, Ryan Flaherty at this point in his career is what he is.
Yeah, he's a backup middle infielder.
He's never going to hit, he's never going to hit over 240, 245. He's just going to be a 225, 235 hitter. He's going to play some solid defense, and that's what he is. He's not supposed he shouldn't be getting as many at bats. I think I saw a tweet out there today that he's gotten like 540 at bats in the last 2 years for this team. I mean, that's insane. Especially when there's guys like, whether it's a guy like Weeks or a guy like Lombardozzi who's down in, I don't know why you don't bring Lombardozzi up and give him a chance to kind of play every day. Again, I don't know if Lombardozzi's the answer either, but I know Flaherty is. So.
Right. He's not Flaherty. The last thing I wanted to say about the offense before we move on is that the Orioles offense seems to get all the runs when the staff gives up even more runs and then gets quiet to a bunch of nobodies when their pitcher finally throws a quality start. It's really a shame that the offense and the pitching staff can't get on the same page, because it seems like if we could turn that around a little bit, we'd be a lot less frustrated.
Exactly, especially when we talked about earlier. I mean, Ubaldo pitched a weird game because it didn't feel like he was having a good game. But when he left the game, he'd given up 3 hits and 1 run in 6 innings, which, again, you'd like him to go a little deeper, but you're not going to complain about 3 hits and 1 run in 6 innings of work.
Yeah, especially with what we've seen over the last week.
Yeah, and especially when we have your pitchers getting 5-6 runs.
Right.
So, and then to give him one run of support is, man, you could just tell the way that game was going. It just didn't have that, like you said earlier, especially when Springer hit it, it was just kind of like, all right, you can just stop this right now because we don't have any more runs in us tonight.
Right. All right, well, let's talk about the pitching. Ubaldo Jimenez, as I mentioned, had a great first inning, and then he really just danced out of trouble from there on out. When we were putting the show notes together tonight, I kept updating it every inning, saying, oh, he squirmed out of the second, oh, he squirmed out of the third, and then I realized that was going to be the game.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he was. When you have 8 strikeouts and you also have 3 walks, I mean, your pitch out's gonna run up. But like you said, that game could have been much worse, and it probably should have been. I mean, luckily the Astros in whatever sense are still the Astros. I mean, they still have holes in their lineup.
Yeah, but they've just won 11 out of their last 16
True.
games.
I mean, but there's still some holes in their lineup. That if this was maybe another team. Maybe if this was the Brewers, you're not leaving 9, 10 guys on, in scoring position. But again, I mean, who we'll read a point to talk about though. They're the Astros. I mean, the difference between the Astros and the Orioles at this point isn't that far apart.
Right. What about what you saw from Preston Guillemette tonight?
It's the curse that I think last time he pitched, I kind of, I was like, he should start looking for real estate in Baltimore. He's going to be around for a while. And I was on the Preston Guillemette train, and then, I mean, he left a pitch there for a guy who's about as hot as any hitter in baseball in Springer.
Yeah, it's his 7th home run in his 7th game in a row.
Yeah, I mean,
ugly.
I mean, it's guys like Springer do what they're supposed to do to pitches like that.
Right.
I mean, again.
Go ahead.
I mean, it was one of it. I'm not ready to throw Preston Gilbert back to back down. I mean, it was a bad inning. And listen, all these guys have had bad innings. It's
Mm.
just unfortunately his kind of cost us the game at this point. But
Sure, and it's the first time that he's cracked all season. He has been impressive when he's been up and when he's pitched thus far. So again, like you said, this is the one that sucks to see, but it's going to happen.
yeah, I mean, again, it's not like he's surrounded by a bunch of guys who have been lights out, and he's the weak link. I mean, at any point, he's been the opposite of that. So, I mean, every one of these guys is capable of has shown that they're capable of putting that type of inning together. So,
Well, the way this post game show works is there's actually a chat room on BaltimoreSportsReport.com/live. We've been asked to talk about the Jeff Samardzija situation, and I don't want to steal any thunder from any of your upcoming podcast episodes, but real quick, if you could just summarize, what are your thoughts about the possibility of the Orioles acquiring Samardzija?
so I've been working on a blog for like 3 days about this, mostly just because it hasn't been done because I'm lazy. But I understand the idea of not wanting. Listen, it's gonna assume that's gonna cost you Kevin Gausman. I think that's the idea that you have to kind of go into it, that it's gonna cost you that. And I understand not wanting to get rid of Kevin Gausman, but I also look at this team and look at this pitching and go, if you don't do something, this year's a wash.
Right.
And there's no guarantee going into next year who's going to be on this team. You're probably going to, in all reality, you're going to probably going to lose Cruz.
Hmm.
There's a chance you're going to lose Hardy. I just read an article yesterday that they're talking about Hardy going to the Yankees because he makes to replace Jeter. So, and then in 2 years you could lose Wieters, Davis. You could lose both of them.
And Markakis' option for next year is $17 million, so you can't be assured that he's going to be back either.
Exactly, and not to mention Markakis has a lot of years, and by the time a guy like Gausman's ready, which maybe it's 2 years, maybe it's 3 years, now you're starting to look at Markakis is up there if he's even on this team. Jones he starts to get up there a little bit, in age and years on his contract. So I don't know if it's. I know it's kind of short-sighted to be like, we get Jeff Samardzija, it might cost us Kevin Gausman, but there's also no guarantees that what Kevin Gausman's going to be.
Well, especially with the Orioles' track record for producing pitching talent. They get a lot of can't-miss guys, and sure enough, they miss. Or they turn into the great relievers that we have in Brian Madison, Zach Britton. So if all the Orioles can produce is trade chips, I mean, maybe we're not using that asset correctly. In the fact that player development can't be trusted to bring these pitchers up into fruition at the major league level, maybe you need to start trading some of them to bring quality back to the club.
And I'll say this: it's not like Gausman's the only young arm. We still have Bundy. I mean, we still have Eduardo Rodriguez, guys
Mike
like
Wright.
Mike Wright. So it's not like it's Gausman or bust. And I understand. I mean, and also, we haven't seen anything from Gausman. Everyone's like, well, he's going to be a number 2, and I'm like, based on what? I mean, yeah, he's pitched good in AAA, but I think I saw, a lot of guys pitch good in AAA. Jake Arrieta pitched good in AAA. I mean, he's gotten up here and the same mistakes he made that, last year is the same mistake he made in the Detroit game. I mean, obviously that was a bad situation for him. It was kind of hanging him out to dry a little bit, but you have Jeff Samardzija and everyone's like, well, he's having a career year. That's not normally who he is. Well, when else would you want him? This is the perfect time to get him.
Yeah. And he's 29, so he's got this year and next year left on his contract. So you're going to have the pitcher at 29 and 30. If we're going to get rid of a guy like Bundy or Gausman to get him, I would certainly hope that the team would be able to work something out for a little bit longer deal than just the 2 years, because that would be tough to swallow if Gausman or Bundy went off to be great for the Cubs and we got basically a 2-year rental.
Well, that's the fear. The fear is that Gausman goes to Chicago, and you just have to watch Gausman for the next 10 years be the guy you thought he was going to be.
All right. So if I'm reading you correctly, you're thinking that our window to win is limited, and we might as well try to move one of these highly rated arms to try to bring somebody in that's gonna to get us wins.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, let's do this. Let's move on to what we saw from the defense tonight. You had a couple of quick observations about Manny Machado.
Yeah, you saw him. Manny this year hasn't obviously been the same guy that he was last year, and I don't know if it's
6 errors so far.
yeah, I don't know if it's kind of such a sophomore slump a little bit, or if it's it's still the knee. But obviously, we had the play that we talked about earlier with Altuve, where he just threw a ball that, I mean, you got to use your head on that one. First of all, the throw wasn't close. He never stood a chance. Even with you have to know who's running too. I mean,
Right.
Altuve was halfway down, was halfway past first by the time he hit the ball. He had the backhand one that he kind of short hopped to Davis that Davis probably should have had. But again, those are throws that we got used to with Machado, or that a year ago that was in Davis's, that was in the glove.
Right.
So he doesn't seem. I don't know. Again, I don't know if it's the knee. I don't. The fear. I mean, we haven't seen a lot of Machado. We base everything we know about him off about basically one season.
Hmm.
I mean, we all assume that he's obviously a talented baseball player, but we don't really know really what level of kind of guy we're getting. I mean, we even from the last half of last year. I mean, he was an average hitter. He obviously still didn't go with the glove, but it's kind of you get kind of you start talking to yourself when you take the last year and the first half of this year and you kind of put it together and you go, well, what do we have here?
Yeah.
So
I think the other thing with Manny defensively is, and I think I misspoke because they did end up changing the official score, gave Davis the error on that throw that he didn't pick out of the dirt. But I think you kind of have to take the good with the bad with Manny, kind of in the way that you do with Jones at the plate, in the fact that Manny is going to be incredibly aggressive on the field. He gets to a lot of balls, and that means that he's going to make those high-risk throws. A lot of the times he's going to get it, and sometimes he's not. And hopefully the times that he doesn't won't burn you too bad. I agree that he probably should have put that ball in his pocket, but at the same time, I like the fact that he's trying to make those plays. It's almost as if his feeling he's invincible in the field is his best asset. So it's kind of a tough spot. Like I said, I'm glad to see that from Machado specifically because just came back from that injury, and it's nice to see him playing with that kind of not reckless but abandon.
yeah, I mean, he's definitely the issue. There's no issue with him getting to balls, in which in a weird way is almost worse in a sense because he looks like he's physically fine, but he's short hopped a couple balls to his glove and the glove was bounced out. I don't know. It's weird. But
All right. Well, why don't we do this? Let's do our final takeaways from the game. In summation, after watching that beautiful ball game, what did you take away from today?
I mean, it's kind of when it rains, it pours. I mean, it's getting really depressing, which for a team that's 500, it shouldn't be. But I mean, they're losing every way possible. They're losing 8-7 games. Like you said, they're losing games where the offense for no reason disappears against a guy like Peacock, and you literally have no idea what team you're going to get night in and night out, which in a sense almost makes it frustrating. At least if you know you have a team that's not going to score and just going to play these close games, you kind of prepare yourself for it. But there's no reason that this team scores one run against a guy like Peacock. It's insanely frustrating.
Well, let me ask you this: Do you think that this is going to round itself out, or do you think this is the team that the 2014 Orioles are?
I mean, I kind of think I think it's a team that they are. I mean, you don't see any reason why it's really going to get better. I think you had a window at the very beginning of the season when the pitching was pitching so well, and we couldn't score. And we left so many wins on the board early in the season,
Hmm.
and now it's kind of rounding out to where the pitchers are kind of who we thought they were going to be, and the hitting is now hasn't kind of. We thought the hitting had caught up a little bit, but today we're kind of you're right back to kind of back to square one here with it. So
Well, I think in my bottom line takeaway was actually Just that we're seeing a 500 club, and I'm not sure if they are a 500 club now. It would be a lot easier to say, oh, it's going to get better if it was just one or two of the pitchers struggling. But you're really seeing an entire staff just crapping out, not even a third of the way through the season, just inexplicably unable to get through the first couple innings without imploding. And like you said, the offense, which is incredibly talented on paper, just disappearing with the exception of Nelson Cruz. So, right now this Orioles team doesn't look like it's a contender from what we've seen in 40 some game or 50 some games. So if that doesn't start to change over the next week or two, it's going to get really depressing if they don't do something like add a pitcher or make some other drastic move to the roster.
I mean, you're talking about a team that we're already talking about the bullpen being overused, and we're 50. We're less than 60 games into the season. I mean, and it hasn't even gotten hot yet. Wait till this summer. It's going to be a hot summer. Wait till it starts getting 95 or 93 in Baltimore.
Well,
I mean,
Baldo Jimenez looked like he was just melting away tonight.
yeah, and we all know what happens with Chen. And like any type of heat or humidity, the guy looks like he's dying out there. So you're already talking about it. You're gonna have the same type of call ups. You're gonna see a lot more TJ McFarland. I mean, these aren't things we want, but these are things we're gonna get unless these guys start, one of these guys really starts getting into some type of groove.
Well, the Orioles lose another one tonight, 3-1. Not a great game to watch, but hey, we hope you enjoyed the post game show here on Channel BSR. Tomorrow night we've got Miguel Gonzalez, who Gary Thorne went out of his way in the broadcast to mention has put together some quality starts. So maybe we'll see better of him up against Brett Oberholzer, who, as I recall, seems to have the Orioles' number whenever they meet.
Of course he does.
Right, of course he does. So, the best we can hope is that the Orioles start to turn around tomorrow. But for now, the not-so-lovely totals, rough game. John, thank you so much for doing this with me.
Thanks for having me.
And you can find John on Orioles Uncensored podcast, which is part of the Ball Hogs Radio Network. Can you tease us for your next episode or anything else you got working?
We don't plan our episodes that far in advance. So
well done, sir. Well done.
If it gets done, it gets done right about Tuesday, right before we get in there. But I mean, hopefully we'll have something good to talk about because we're getting into the everything sucks. When's it gonna get better rut? And it's sometimes bad baseball is easy to talk about, but I'd rather talk about some good times.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully the next time we get together, we'll have better baseball to talk about.
Absolutely.
All right. So for that, Baltimore and beyond, I will bid you a fond adieu.